Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, at the end of last week, NOAA released its latest statewide average temperature ranks maps and precipitation ranks maps, which are shown here. The time period over which we're going to look at the beginning of the video goes from January to October, and there's a few standouts here. Notice the parts of the Southwest and also in Florida setting records here for this time period on temperatures. But come over to the map that's on the right there. You can see how dry things have been in the West, Four Corner States, even parts of the plains, while much of the Southeast, the Mid-Atlantic, getting into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, and also the lower Mississippi River Delta here, showing up extremely wet, given the number of tropical systems that have cut through this area throughout this summer and fall. One map I'll be paying very close attention to over the next several months is going to be this one. Latest drought monitor released last Thursday shows us widespread drought across the western United States. What's going to be critical about this map is to see this drought area change both in intensity and size as we work our way through the winter months, as it will be a precursor for what we could expect in spring, and it'll also tell us how much water we have tucked away in the mountains in terms of snowfall this winter. So let's watch this one evolve very carefully as we progress through the next several months. Now, over the last month, on the left-hand side here, we have the October 1st through October 31st average temperature ranks by climate district. You can see the large ridge over the western United States did direct quite a bit of cold air to come out of the Canadian prairies, cutting into the central plains of the United States over toward the Great Lakes states. Many regions there having very, very cold go of it in October. But November has seen a large pattern flip, and just look at the extensive warm weather we've seen inside that wedge I just drew there, with many climate reporting districts here telling us that over the time period of the last 128 years, it's been the warmest such time period when you just want to think about the start to a November. Now, putting that into perspective, I want to go back and I want to look at the long-range forecast for October, and then we're going to look at the long-range forecast for this winter. The European model, it's in its seasonal forecast for the month of October, did call for much of the western half of North America to be warm. The model at the beginning of October suggested it was going to be cooler east. Well, the verification's over here on the left, and it really just shows you how hard it is to forecast long-range weather. What we did see was that a lot of cold air intrusions at times coming out of the Canadian prairies, spreading east across Ontario and Quebec, and then getting all the way down here to Texas at times, really defined what our October pattern looked like. And it just illustrates once again that when it comes to the things that really push us hard with our weather forecasting abilities, it is seasonal weather forecasting. It is at the forefront of our science. So I would like to then, with that as a backdrop, talk about what we're expecting December 2020 through February 2021. This is the latest update issued on the 5th of November for that time period from the European model. Now, your eyes probably quickly go to how wet things are looking here in the Intermountain West and also the Pacific Northwest. And you can almost see here a reinvigoration of the Ohio River Valley storm track. Right now, the models are suggesting that this winter we're going to see a lot of troughing that's coming right out of this area. And therefore, we're expecting the weather pattern to be doing quite a bit of a flow like that. So repeated troughs into the northwest would suggest quite a bit of snow in the northern Rockies. And then we can see an active storm track from the Ohio River Valley through the Great Lakes, Ontario, Quebec. What's missing in this forecast is any sort of a strong subtropical jet stream component, which is why we see so much of the southern part of the U.S. getting all the way over to the southeast and mid-Atlantic showing up dry in this. So that's very typical La Nina setup here. One of the things you notice about the temperature map is widespread warmth. But remember, this is compared to the 1980 to 2010 temperature averages. And what we could see at times is some very cold air intrusions cutting out of the Pacific Northwest, coming out of the Canadian prairies. We do anticipate a mild winter for the southern part of the United States, though. So with that as a backdrop, what's probably controlling this and what controls all of our long-range weather forecasting is usually the sea surface temperatures. And that map on top there shows you what we've currently got right now, and it still features that dominant La Nina pattern that's cutting across the central part of the Pacific Ocean. We can see that the long-range forecasts are now starting to really build this through the month of November and December, probably reaching a peak at some point in January. And that is later in the year than I had originally thought. But what I want to remind you is that while our long-range forecasts are going to be dominated by these ocean temperature patterns, it's the subseasonal fluctuations in our in like the Arctic Oscillation or the polar vortex, the North Atlantic Oscillation, which tells us about ridges and troughs in the North Atlantic, the EPO and PNA, which is the same thing for the North Pacific, and also, remember, sitting on top of the La Nina El Nino region, we do have the MJO, which goes between Africa and the Central Pacific. You see, these subseasonal features here are not forecastable weeks and months in advance. And when they align, they can often give us large disruptions and large fluctuations in our weather pattern, which is often what makes us remember a winter. So I'd at least like to let you know what's going on with them right now. First, over here on the left, we're looking at the height anomaly pattern deep into the atmosphere, way up there at 10 millibars. And what's interesting is right in this area here is where we have our largest anomalies. That sits over the Chukchi Sea and the Bering Sea, which right in through here is an area that is currently ice-free. We know that 2020 is the lowest sea ice extent since we've been measuring since 1979. And that gradient in temperature there coming out of the Arctic into the Bering Sea, which I'll put an X in, I think is going to be driving a lot of the atmosphere ocean's circulation here. And what I mean is this could be a source region for the foreseeable future of where our troughs will be coming out of. So we need to watch this area as the potential kind of spot where things get going. Now, is our polar vortex right now in a mode where it's about to be disrupted? We wouldn't think so. When you look at the graph that's over there on the right, just remember this. The top of this graph tells us where there's a strong polar vortex moving forward. The bottom historically would be where it's weak. What we want to watch out for are major disruptions where we drop down to the bottom of this graph. All right, that would tell us that the polar vortex has been weakened and therefore cold air will really spill away from the North Pole. But if we stay where it currently sits, which is right about in through here, that would be above average. And if this winter features a strong polar vortex at times, we would see fewer massive cold air intrusions. That's the point to be said there. I do not see any major cold air intrusions coming from the polar vortex in the near term on this side of the planet. What about the MJO? Well, the MJO is over here in phase 8 currently, and it's expected to come weekly into phase 1 and 2. Now, historically, that corresponds with a phase 1 temperature pattern like this and a phase 2 temperature pattern like that, which once again is supportive of that cold air frequently coming out of the northwest and occupying much of the western part of the U.S. So with that as a setup, where is this all going? Well, the MJO, interestingly enough, seems to be kind of stuck in its current configuration. With time, we see this. Good upper level support here, and good upper level support here for rising motion, with broad subsidence over the Pacific. Now, why I say it's stuck is because normally when we look out at a graphic like this, which shows us velocity potential or upward and downward motion in the upper levels of the atmosphere, the MJO typically has a slant to it, so it typically goes like that. That would be the normal movement of the MJO. But if it's going to stay here over phases 1 and 2, that will be important not only for the temperature pattern coming up, but also for our tropical season. Now, over last night and then into today, we did see Tropical Storm Eta, which we talked about a lot last week, cut through parts of the southern tip of Florida. I believe this is now the 11th tropical system to make landfall in the United States. But each one of these rain bands, as you can see here, producing a lot of flooding. And I found a video I just have to show you here. This was shown across southern Florida television stations over the weekend. Guy here in his Lamborghini driving around in the floodwaters. With a wedge-shaped car, you can't drive fast in floodwaters or it'll dive. And that's what we saw there. So I just thought you might get a kick out of that. But let's come back to the science of this. We're going to be watching where Eta goes. And you can see that for a while here, it's going to come back out into the Gulf of Mexico before getting pulled to the north as a trough sweeps through the U.S. Now, this could come back into Florida, Georgia, and up the Carolina coast here as a tropical cyclone, possibly at tropical storm strength. But the National Hurricane Center did forecast them to possibly get back up to hurricane strength while out over the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll watch that carefully. But we're not done yet with the tropics. You see, the National Hurricane Center, given the MJO's position, it's still likely that we could see tropical systems coming out of the Caribbean. And you can see that the latest guidance here from early this morning suggested from the National Hurricane Center a 50% probability of some tropical thunderstorms that are down there in the Caribbean to strengthen, and also a 60% probability on the system that's moving to the east here out in the Central Pacific. Okay, so where would we be on names? This would be, we have Eta. Theta and then Iota would be the next two names that are on the Greek alphabet that we would go through here. From there, we do have a deep trough that is still cutting into the west. It brought blizzard conditions to Montana, Saskatchewan, and into Manitoba. And also the main frontal boundary out ahead of it is cutting early this morning through Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota. That deep trough that brought rain into California, into Arizona, some places in Arizona, the first time they'd seen precipitation since April, by the way, has been quite deep and quite vigorous. And what we have to ask ourselves is, where is it going? So for the last 72 hours, here's our total accumulated precipitation. And that is the first meaningful precipitation I have seen across this much of the West United States in a very, very long time. So let's see where this pattern is going to go, because we have 1, 2, 3 troughs that are lined up to kind of cut through Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, into the central part of the United States. We can also see the circulation around Eta, which is here, and also a large high that's still tucked away that's been protecting the East Coast and keeping things very, very warm here. So this is very much in line with what we talked about here. Our troughs coming out of the Northwest and no strong subtropical jet stream component setting up at this point. So where's it going? Well, let's just play this out here and take a look. As we work our way through this week, we have a lead shortwave that's going to cut through parts of the central U.S. going into Iowa and up toward Wisconsin. On Tuesday, what we're going to watch is for this sharp shortwave here to have some snow on the backside of it, rain and storms out ahead of it. But you'll see that one pulls through and heads up toward parts of Ontario, while the next trough comes digging into the west. As that one comes in, it keeps the temperatures cool, and also it's going to invigorate a system midweek that'll cut through parts of the central United States. But then you're going to see, as we work our way from Friday into the weekend, that wave moves through this part of Ontario and the Great Lakes, and by Friday, our next deep trough comes cutting into the Pacific Northwest right here. Now, it's going to have 2 pieces to it. You see there's a trough here, and there's also a lead wave out here. And as we work our way into the weekend, the lead wave gets flung almost out ahead of this, so we're going to see what that means for precipitation Saturday and Sunday. But then the main trough then ejects here by the time we get into Sunday afternoon. So you notice with me that the source of cold air, the source of our waves, is coming out of this area, and it keeps coming into the Pacific Northwest. And these waves do kick through. So this one's going to make it here by Tuesday. But you do see broad ridging happening behind this. So the shot at some cooler air that comes into the eastern half of North America, I think, will be brief at best. So let's get in here and take a look at what some of these details are. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to watch today in through this area for showers and storms. Tuesday, it's going to be right in here into parts of Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, southern Wisconsin. And Wednesday, it's going to move over here toward the southeast up to the mid-Atlantic. You can see that unfold here by playing out our high-resolution NAM model. I stopped this early this morning, so there's our frontal boundary pushing the precipitation in through parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, Minnesota. Snow on the backside and also some snow here in the Rockies. Moving this forward, we get into this afternoon and then into this evening. And we could watch this little band right in through here for some scattered showers and storms. And as the Storm Prediction Center is watching out for, some of these storms might pop up and be relatively strong. Now going from there into the overnight hours and now emerging on Tuesday, here's that snow that I was telling you about on the backside. This is Tuesday morning coming out of Nebraska, maybe Kansas, but up into this part of Iowa. That'll then push to the north through Minnesota, right over the Twin Cities, and then into Wisconsin. Meanwhile, where we're watching for our chance for storms, that's where the frontal boundary is going to be cutting through. This all moves into the Ohio River Valley in the afternoon and evening hours, and then in the overnight hits from parts of the northeast right through the Appalachian Mountains down through this area. Going into tomorrow, we're going to have to talk about what's the next wave coming out of the Pacific Northwest, and to do that, I need to show you the European model. So let's play this forward where we've gotten to, which is right here, Wednesday morning. At this point, going from Wednesday into Thursday, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. That's going to be the time period where the northeast through the mid-Atlantic down into the southeast is going to see its best chance of precipitation. Again, Wednesday into Thursday morning. Going forward from there, this is Thursday afternoon and evening. Now working our way into Friday morning, afternoon, and evening. At this point, a deep trough cuts into the Pacific Northwest, and we are expecting extremely strong winds here by Friday night. Snow really piling up in the Cascade Mountains. But remember, this is the point where I said there's a lead wave, and it's right in through this area. Now, as we watch that lead wave, this is going to be Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon and evening. You can see more precipitation moving right in through the midsection of the country, with possibly some more snow in this part of Wisconsin and Michigan. But that deeper trough is now working its way into the west, and it will emerge by the time we get to Sunday into Monday morning here over parts of the Great Lakes. So expect next week to start off with very windy conditions in this place as well. But let's put it all together and just watch an animation of total accumulated precipitation. Let's play this forward and just look out here over the next couple of days. By Tuesday afternoon, remember, this is where we're going to see quite a bit of that precipitation spread through. It's going to be a while before it gets through parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, though. Meanwhile, on the backside, snows here on the west-facing slopes of the Rocky Mountains, and we're going to talk about how much snow is expected in this area as the first blizzard kicks on out. But let's go from here through the middle of the week. So this is now getting to Wednesday, Thursday. Now let's get into Friday. Remember, it's going to be that Wednesday through Friday time period where we get our heavy precipitation here from the mid-Atlantic all the way down to the southeast, and that's also where Eta finally interacts with parts of Florida and Georgia. And then as you saw, the next system, the deep one coming in on Friday, really increasing the precipitation chances for the Pacific Northwest. So that gets us out to Saturday and into Sunday. From there, what about snow? Well, let's just play this out. What we see here is there's this system coming through on Tuesday, Wednesday. Couple of inches here, but the snow really piling up right there in the Rockies as that next deep trough cuts through on Friday into Saturday. And we could see in the Cascade Mountains here upwards of 2 to 3 feet of snow, and some of that getting down to the Sierra Nevada. Here's our first blizzard, still raging today through parts of Saskatchewan over into Manitoba. But over our next week, this is how much snow we're expecting from the operational European model. From there, by day 10, our deep trough is still sitting here, a bit more of a relaxed pattern. We'll talk about what that means in terms of precipitation and temperature in a few moments. But do notice by day 15, remember at the beginning, we said our source region is going to be coming out of Alaska. Well, if we're waiting on our next trough to come out of that area, we could see, warmer temperatures really spreading here as we work our way toward Thanksgiving. From that point, I'm going to talk about the week 2 precipitation from our ensemble models. With the troughs coming into the west, starting at the end of this week, you do see wetter conditions there in both the GFS and the European. But after we get through the rain that could be coming through and some snow in the central part of the United States that we're going to expect to see at the end of this week, well, through the middle of this week in the end, the week 2 pattern is a bit flatter, and therefore you see near average to drier than average conditions. Okay, temperatures. We do see that today in California, we do have freeze warnings. Don't forget, we're still under blizzard warnings and winter storm warnings here in parts of Montana as well. But let's talk about those minimum temperatures in California. We started to pick up on this midweek last week, but we are expecting frost right in through this area in the Central Valley today. And early this morning, I should say. And that is untimely for some folks in this area. But look at the broad scale warmth underneath that ridge here. Some places our overnight lows are sitting, 20 to 30 degrees above average. Well, let's watch these overnight lows over the next couple of days. So Tuesday morning, once again, a very cold one here as the warmth spreads to the east. Going from Tuesday into Wednesday morning's lows, now into Thursday, and then into Friday. We see that the cold air does start to spread across the central part of the United States once we get to the middle and into this week. But the southeast, you really hang on to some warm temperatures through this weekend. What about those highs? Again, through the Great Lakes states today into the northeast, we're talking about high temperatures that are 20 to 30 degrees above average. But it's pretty easy to find the front where the precipitation is early this morning. Playing this forward, let's go from Monday into Tuesday. Then into Wednesday, that'll be when the cooler air finally spreads with the first wave here, knocking temperatures back toward normal. Still cold in Montana, cold across the west compared to normal. This is Thursday, getting into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now from that point forward, take a look at the 5 to 10 day outlooks from the GFS and the European. Remember, the resetting of the cold air in this area allowed for a bit more of a relaxed pattern across a broad section here of the United States. So we could see some, another warm up. And then again, taking us out there into that 10 to 15 day time period, which gets us out into the week of Thanksgiving here. We do see the models really favoring the above average temperatures with the reset of the colder air coming into this area. Now, from this point forward, I want to step south and talk a bit here about what's going on over South America. This animation shows us our last week. I want you to see where the precipitation targeted just over the last week. We do see that much of the last 7 days has been dry in parts of central and southern Brazil, and also without the rainfall we just got here recently in Argentina, it was a drier week there as well. Looking over the last month, we do know that we have, as of late, brought more precipitation into this area, but a really distinct dry pattern showing up in like Paraná, Santa Catarina, and down into Rio Grande do Sul. Buenos Aires has had some recent heavier rainfall, but we're still dry in parts of Argentina. Now, why I bring this up is that over the next week, that corridor through central Brazil, getting even down to Paraná and Mato Grosso do Sul, is expected to see, anywhere between 1.5 inches to 2 inches of rainfall. But there is a corridor right in through here that could show up dry. And what we're starting to get concerned is you saw that it had been dry as of late. And not only is the week 1 precipitation pattern not favorable, but the week 2 shows up dry there as well. From there forward, I'm going to finish this up with a long-range outlook for South America. The latest update from the European model echoes the previous, with the La Nina possibly dominating the pattern, keeping it drier in Argentina, which means we just have an increased risk there of drought development, and also in northeast Brazil. But right in through this quarter and through here, things appear to stay wet in the long-range forecast. So I think that's a good point to stop here. These are the things we're going to be watching carefully, as they're going to control a lot of what goes on with our winter months here in North America and the summer months in South America. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.